we are going to be taking this photo and turning it into this photo, mostly using a combination of, well, lots of different tools in Lightroom. Masks. Oh, you better believe we're going to be using masks. Let's get into it. It's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, which each and every Tuesday we bring you a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. This week, like I say, let's dive in. We're going to be working with this photo. We're going to try and really richen up the colors, make the light work much better for us. This is one of those photos where, you know, it's all kind of come together in terms of it's a photo of my dog Nala. She's looking right down the lens. Ideal. She's sitting there posing perfectly, but I do have to just snap the photo, right? There's not a lot I can do about the light. It's all natural light. We've got a nice backdrop, right? We've got a nice depth of field. I actually think it works really well as a portrait, but we just want to fix some things up in terms of the way it's going to look. And we need to build that up somewhat gradually to get there. So let's begin with a few basic kind of global adjustments. So we're going to start off by, I think we're going to leave the exposure where it is, but we're going to bring the highlights down a little bit, shadows up just a touch. I'm actually going to bring the contrast down as well, because we're going to have to work a little bit with the light actually on her face and things like that. We're going to bring the clarity and the texture up a little bit, the vibrance up a touch, and the saturation just down a little bit. These are some sort of basic things which aren't going to make a huge amount of difference to the photo, but we can see it before and after by pressing the backslash key on the keyboard. So if we press that, this is where we started, this is where we've got to. Very, very minor difference so far. I'm actually going to adjust the white balance as well. Let's warm this up a little bit, something like that. And let's just bring the tint down towards the green. Nothing crazy, but something like that. Obviously, there's a lot of green in the photo, which I think the camera was trying to combat with the auto white balance, but I just want to make sure there's not too much magenta in there, especially kind of on her face. Look at that, she's really looking right down the lens, which is pulling a nice expression, everything. Ideal. Right, okay, let's carry on. So immediately, my next thought is we are going to have to work with some masks here, because before we start working with color too much, I want to correct some of the exposure that we're dealing with here. So we're going to come up here to the masking panel, and we're going to go ahead and actually, before we even do that, we're going to come over to the left and use the adaptive subject actual presets, which actually apply masks in a kind of preset way to the photo. We're going to go with pop. And what that's going to do is actually mask our subject here. So it's going to find the subject, mask her out in this case, and just brighten her. So immediately we've got a new mask applied, which is really useful with a little bit of a bump in exposure. If we go ahead and click on that mask there, you can see it's just bringing that exposure up a little bit, just helping her to pop against that background. That's actually, I think, pretty useful. Now we're going to go ahead and do our own mask. We could have done that ourselves as well by going select subject here for a new mask and then just bringing the exposure up. But that can be a little bit of a quicker way to do things if we want to do it that way. You know, instead, it's nice to have the option, right? It's nice to have Lightroom be able to do that for us when that is a pretty standard action you might want to take. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is actually darken some of the areas around her. So the first thing I want to do is actually darken this foreground. I don't think there's any need for it to be kind of as bright as this. In fact, you know what? We might even come in, do a little bit of a crop here. I don't think we need as much of the surrounding areas as we have. Maybe something like that. I want to keep her fairly central. Yeah, there we go. That's quite nice. Right, now let's come back into this mask, which if we press O on the keyboard, we can see where it's being applied to here. And we're going to really darken this foreground area. And that's because it's going to help push our viewer's eye up to our subject. It's a trick we use in a lot of different photos, not just portraits, all kinds of stuff actually. It can really help shape where the kind of viewer's eye naturally goes to, which is really useful. Okay, good. That's actually worked pretty well. I'm also going to come in here and do a big radial gradient behind Nala, something like that. And I'm going to right click on that, intersect mask with select background. And now that is only going to be applied behind her. Like I say, there we go. And we're going to bring that exposure down just a little bit. So we're darkening that kind of backdrop area. Okay, I quite like that. Let's go ahead and do another radial gradient. I'm going to do this over her face here. I'm just going to brighten that a little bit. We just want to get some brightness to her face. I think we want that to be the kind of focal point of the image, right? So really lean into that a little bit. And actually, we might even go ahead and do a brush here. I'm just going to dab onto her eyes Now, we don't want to go too crazy with this, but a little bit of exposure might just help draw us into her eyes specifically. Okay, that's quite nice. This is looking quite nice. Again, a before and after. So this is where we started. This is where we've got to. So already we've made this look much more natural, much more kind of true to life, and we have really corrected a lot of the light. But we'll go a bit further because I really want to make this feel rich. You know? Okay, let's come in. Let's do another linear gradient. This time we're going to go from the left. Something like that. This is the opposite way to the way that the light is coming into the photo. You can see the light is on the right of her. We're going to go ahead and intersect this with the background. So this is just coming into the mask, right click, intersect mask with, and then select background. And this is going to allow me to just darken things again, but in a slightly more interesting way. I can still actually come in and adjust this mask. So it's here. I can still change this, but it's only being applied behind Nala, which is great. So if I press O, you can see where this is being applied. But now, because it's the opposite side to where the light is, it makes sense that we're darkening that area. But what we might want to do, bring in another linear gradient, something like this. And what we're going to do is not actually make this behind her. We're going to actually just bring some exposure up. Come down here to the dehaze, do a little bit of negative dehaze. That's just now bringing in some kind of sunlight coming in. We're just accentuating that feeling of the light coming in from the right. Lovely. Just warm that a touch. Nothing too crazy, but a little bit. Okay, that is looking pretty good, actually. I love the way this has been shaped with the light. It's looking really tasty. Okay, let's go ahead and do a radial gradient now. I'm going to do a reasonably large one, something like that. I'm just going to brighten that a touch. And then let's do one more. Big one like this, invert this, and just bring that exposure down. Okay, that is looking pretty good. Now, we can see how much these masks are affecting things by just clicking on this eye icon up here above all the masks. So without any masks at all, that's what it's looking like. And this is what the masks are doing. They're really bringing the photo to life. Certainly in terms of light, they are changing the whole look of it, really. Let's come back over to the global settings here. Again, let's do a full before and after. So this is, again, how the photo looked basically straight out of camera. This is what we've got to do. Huge difference. Huge difference. I'm actually going to warm this up a little bit more. Right, I want to feel the glow of the sun. Okay, great. That's looking pretty good. I might have warmed that a little bit too much. We'll have to maybe come back to it and see how we feel. I'm actually going to bring the blacks down just a little bit as well. Maybe boost those whites a touch. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's come down here to the HSL sliders. Now, this is where we can affect the colors, the hue, the saturation, and the luminance of different colors. Let's go ahead and actually play around with the hue a little bit. Oranges, I'm going to bring down to the left a little bit. Same with the yellows. And the greens, I'm going to bring over to the left a little bit as well. That's probably going to make the biggest difference in this photo. There's a lot of green to work with. You can see if I go to the extreme, you can see what it's going to do. So I want to bring it over to the left a little bit because it's going to give us a little bit more of a golden feel to the photo. Something like that. I actually think that looks really nice. Let's go ahead over to the saturation here. I want to bring that orange down a little bit. And I'll tell you why. If you see on her face here, we're definitely getting quite a lot of orange kind of glow. And I just want to take some of that out. Not all of it, but I found it a little distracting. And that might be personal taste. You know, we can all do whatever we want with these photos. But for me, I wanted to take a little bit of that out. I might just bring the yellow down a little bit as well. And in terms of the green, let's see what that looks like. You know, if we bring that down a bit, how does that kind of feel? A little bit more natural? I do quite like that. Let's bring that yellow up just a touch again. Something like that. Okay. That is actually looking pretty good. This, to me, is rich and bold. There's nice contrast. It looks good, but it hasn't gone too crazy in terms of this over-stylized look to the photo. It just looks actually like this really nice light now, which is nice. That's exactly what I wanted to kind of achieve. We can come down here and we could similarly use things like the vignette, but we've already kind of applied that ourselves without using that. We've got a little bit more control by using masks. Same thing with the calibration. We could bring the red primary over towards the orange and the blue primary over towards the sort of teal area. That's quite nice. It makes a subtle difference, nothing crazy. I actually quite like it. Maybe we'll leave that in. So this is kind of where we've ended up. I don't know that there's a huge amount more we need to do to this photo. We could do a little bit of dodging and burning on Nala, but I just don't think we actually need to do that. That might look a little something like this. So let's go ahead and do create a new mask. Let's do a radial gradient. Let's do something like this. And we can right click on that, intersect mask with select subject. And what that's going to do is give us a nice kind of feathered gradient, but only applied to Nala. Let's go ahead and just brighten that a little bit. That's quite nice. If we were going to do the same sort of thing on the other side, we might do something like this, another radial gradient, right click on that, intersect mask with select subject. Now it's only on her left side, and we could just darken that a little bit. Gives us a little bit of depth to her, which is quite nice. You know what I might do is come down to the calibration, just reset that. I just don't know that I like it. I think I prefer it like that. There we go. So we've added that tiny little bit of dodging and burning for Nala. We've obviously shaped the light in the overall photo, which I quite like. She is on a hill. I'm slightly conflicted as to whether I should straighten it up. I kind of don't want to, because that is what it looks like. The photo is basically straight. I think I like it like this. Let's go ahead and press the backslash key to see it before and after. So this is where we started. You can see a very, very different kind of photo with light, with color, the contrast, the feel of it. This is where we've ended up, right? And really all we've done is affected the exposure in different areas of the photo using masks. And of course the color as well a little bit. Nothing crazy. We've just gradually built it up with these different masks, right? So that's before, that's after. We can also press Y on the keyboard to see side by side a before and after. So you can really get to kind of see the difference in the photo. But I'll be honest with you, I actually really feel like we've probably got to where I want to get to. Look, I think that's a nice photo, and it ends up being a nice portrait of my dog. And sometimes, especially when you're dealing with animals actually, you just have to get the photo and then work with what you've got later, because she was not going to be looking at the lens for long, right? Because she's looking around. She's looking at me. She's not going to look down the lens for long. You know what I mean? And, you know, she wants to play. She's waiting really to play. So it's great to be able to get the photo, but then to take it from this, which is, it's completely fine and probably the best I could do actually in terms of the light. And actually, I'm lucky that she sat kind of in this slight bit of shade, so we get some slightly interesting light. But actually being able to turn it into this with some masks makes a big difference. Now, is there anything else that you would have done to this photo that we've not done? Anything you would have gone maybe a touch further? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. Or maybe you wouldn't have gone as far. Or maybe you wouldn't have changed quite as much. I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments what you think about that, because it's always super interesting. It's always really, it's such a subjective thing. And I think it's so interesting to learn kind of where people's line is as to how far they like to go with an edit. I actually think, I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty pleased. I think I've kept it reasonably restrained this time, which is quite nice. Of course, there's a full list for all the kit we use for these photos, for this video, for all that kind of stuff down in the description of the video, so you can check that out for yourself. Don't forget to like, subscribe as well. There's new content all the time. I will see you in the next video. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.